Well, thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning, distinguished fellow guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted once again to have this opportunity to address your annual conference. Certainly since we gathered here in this setting a year ago, there have been a number of changes. The police service is under new leadership, as is the Federation following the recent elections. The importance of the democratic process cannot be overstated, and it's not without its challenges. Indeed, some of you may have noticed those challenges yesterday in the Assembly. But I commend you in the Federation and your associates for your willingness to stand and to represent the best interests of the Federation and all its members, and congratulate all those elected. You've been elected to positions of responsibility at a very difficult financial time, and so it's not at all surprising to me that the Chairman's address has majored on the financial environment and the direct negative impact that this will have on services to the public. Unfortunately, this is a common and an unwelcome theme that has been a focus of the many discussions I've had with a wide range of stakeholders and partners over the last 12 months or so. I hear your frustrations, I share your frustrations, and I wish it was not so. But you will be aware, not least from the recent media reports, that the financial climate we face is extremely bleak. Sadly, not all of those who've been elected to positions of responsibility have been willing to exercise that responsibility, adding even greater uncertainty to the already very difficult budget scenario being faced by my department and every other department. In these circumstances, my job as Justice Minister is to present the best possible case for funding for the entire justice system and then make the difficult decisions around the allocation of available resources. I've given a commitment to ensuring that, to the best of my ability, frontline services will be protected. Regrettably, that does not and cannot mean that they will not be affected at this time. The size of the funding cake has been reduced. All will inevitably get a smaller slice. Just as the executive has to live within its budget, so too must I, and so too must each part of the justice family. The 2015-16 savings targets for my core department is the highest across the Northern Ireland departments at 22%. Within that, in comparison, the savings target for the PFNI has been set at 5.7%. That reflects my ongoing pledge to protect frontline policing. I understand and I appreciate that a budget cut of any size is unwelcome, but it is, I'm afraid, unavoidable. In managing this, prioritising the delivery of policing services will be crucial. These are matters for the Chief Constable and for his senior command team. I know that they're not always easy decisions, especially when the impact on the availability of officers to respond to the needs of the public. Chairman, you mentioned the underspend in the last financial year and your frustration clearly shared in this room at the inability to carry this forward into 2015-16. My department did raise the issue with the Department of Finance on behalf of the PFNI. We were advised that it is not possible, as the Treasury Budget Exchange Scheme, the system available to devolved administrations to carry forward underspend between financial years, is set at the level of the Northern Ireland block and not below it. There is no mechanism for earmarking departmental funds for priority allocation in the next year. I'm aware that the Chief Constable has called for a fundamental review of PFNI funding arrangements. Be assured that I will always work to achieve the best possible funding package for our police service. But while I pledge to work my hardest in this respect, I can only do so within the confines of the framework under which government operates. That is frustrating for everybody involved, including for me. Mark, I listened when you said that this is a unique position in Northern Ireland and no such obstacles exist in the other regions of the UK. If there is a real opportunity to seek a change to this process, and if there is a discussion to be had in this respect, I'm ready to do that, and to call on my colleagues in the executive or wider to explore ways of achieving it. I heard also your concerns around the impact of dwindling officer numbers. Yes, 15 years ago, we had almost double the number of officers we have now. But in many aspects of life in Northern Ireland, we have moved on, and the fact that we no longer need a police service on that scale is a good thing. The agreed policing requirement for today is for 6,963 officers. and no one is disputing that this number of officers is required. While available funding will provide for a moderate level of recruitment to take place this year if plans carry through, it is evident that recruitment is unlikely to allow us to reach that figure. I would, of course, dearly like to be in the position to stand here today, like my counterpart in Scotland, and promise you more officers. But the simple fact is I cannot. I will not make empty promises from this platform. That would be misleading. It would only serve to foster false hopes. But what I will do is work within our own devolved administration, the executive, the assembly, to press for the best possible deal for our policing service. I'm realistic. I recognize that as politicians we're often, frequently rightly, criticized for many things. I take each and every opportunity to remind MLAs and to remind ministers of the real effects that decisions that are taken have on public services, the impact that each and every one of those decisions has. In particular, this week, I've been very clear about the detrimental impact that inaction on welfare reform is having on many of our services, including many of our justice services. Chairman, you talked about the recently published recorded crime figures in Northern Ireland. There is no suggestion that it is the fault of police officers that recorded crime has been on the rise. On the contrary, the rise may be linked in part to increased confidence in policing and the resultant effect that this has on the reporting of crime. Indeed, it is our joint aim that some of the more intractable and difficult crime types see an increase in reporting, things like domestic violence and hate crime. And I want to touch on that for a moment because I think it goes to the heart of your role. As you said, Chairman, some of the most vulnerable people in our society look to you at the bleakest times in their lives. You see and help the victims of domestic and sexual violence. You see and help victims of hate crime. You see and help young people and older citizens, and you go to their assistance on behalf of all of us. You do so with professionalism and with dedication. But more than that, you organize your capabilities to great effect, and you develop partnerships with other organizations to deliver fantastic outcomes for the most vulnerable people in society, for victims and witnesses, and indeed to help reduce reoffending. This is important. As our resources reduce, and while I wish that it was otherwise, I retain great hope in your abilities to make a difference. I say that because I've seen what you can do organizationally and what you can do at an individual level and in partnership with others. I've seen you develop new and innovative solutions to problems, and I've seen you, perhaps more so than many other organizations in Northern Ireland, use your skills and understandings of the communities you police to get right to the heart of the problems that you see on the ground. The Reducing Offending in Partnership initiative is a case in point, an initiative made by the police and driven by the police. Working in partnership with other organizations across the justice family, you've developed new ways of attacking old problems with great effect. In this initiative, I see real understanding of your local communities and a real drive for better outcomes in terms of reducing offending and making the community safer. There is much for you to be proud of. I see creative thinking too in terms of the police response to disorder and the justice outcomes you wish to see in this community. Working closely with community partners, thinking about the ways to involve the community in your decisions is a growing area of your work, and it is one that I watch with interest. If we need the full weight of the law, that is what we must have. If we need custodial sentences, that is what we must have. But your creativity in developing community-based solutions will, I have no doubt, be part of the policing landscape. And not just for financial reasons either. I firmly believe that the police have the will, the stamina, and the ingenuity to move the justice agenda forward in spite of the financial situation. This is entirely in line with our shared need to reduce crime and to make the community a safer place. And I'm clear that responsibility for this does not rest with the police alone. It is a job of work for my department to help open doors for you with other departments and all who have that vital role in reducing offending. I'm personally committed to finding new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems, and to greater partnership working. We can also work together more effectively to support victims and witnesses going through the justice system. One of our most significant achievements has been the introduction of a victim and witness care unit, staffed by the PFNI and the Public Prosecution Service. This unit is ensuring that victims and witnesses of crime are provided with a single point of contact for as much of the prosecution process as possible. It is clear that you, the police, play a critical role in many of our joint services, given your frontline role in the protection of our community and the investigation of crime. In practical terms, however, the rise in recorded crime is likely to impact not only on an already strained service, but also on individual officers. We all know that a policing career is a unique role. We must ensure that we don't take the goodwill of dedicated officers for granted. We all want, and we're all entitled to, time to enjoy a personal life. I want to see a service which can respond to the demands expected of it. But I also want to see a service that will allow its most important resource, its people, the time they need to rest, to recharge, to enjoy a home life. I know that many officers were personally disappointed by the introduction of police pension reform. That reaction is perfectly understandable and indeed was shared by many members of other public service pension schemes, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across the UK. The Federation argued the case for its members, and as a result, police officers' pensions are among the very best available across the public sector in Northern Ireland, providing a guaranteed pension level for all police officers. Mark, you also reflected on the almost constant change, which I can assure you is not limited to policing. In a period of what seems to be a never-ending programme of change, officers are asked time and time again to adapt. But in my experience, time and time again, they've stepped up and responded to that ask. That is commendable. The challenge now is to make the most of any opportunity that change presents. I believe, for example, that the recent alignment of policing districts to the new council structure is a vehicle for improvement and enhanced stability. There are long-term benefits to be gained. I'm hopeful that the new structure will result in improved service delivery at the local level for people right across Northern Ireland. I'm hopeful that it will allow your voice to be heard within local government as the new councils take on their community planning responsibilities. I'm also hopeful that it will allow us to make much more of our PCSPs. And of course, there remain obstacles to the further development of community policing. In some respects, Northern Ireland has not changed enough. Unfortunately, as in previous years, I cannot make a speech at this conference without addressing the issue of security, as your chairman did. Let me say again that as Justice Minister, as a member of the Executive, and as a citizen, I want to thank you for all you do to help keep our community as safe as possible. The need for continued vigilance, the increased police presence around the election period, was evidenced by the recent incidents, including those that have been referred to earlier. Those who carry out these acts have no regard for the community or for public safety, or indeed for democracy. Their commitment to the use of violence has no place in our society, and they need to move on. Against the backdrop of that violence, I recognise the pressures that your members work under. I've had opportunities to visit officers at work and see at first hand the work they do in different parts of Northern Ireland, and I know that such visits can only offer a very brief flavour of the difficult situation that officers face on a daily basis. I know that they put themselves in harm's way in the course of their duty, and in doing so, they deserve the respect and gratitude of all in this society. I have the utmost sympathy for those officers who find themselves having to leave their homes as a direct result of the threat of harm. No officer should ever be put in that position. Unfortunately, coupled with the dramatic changes in the housing market, this has left a small number of officers in financial distress. I know that various supportive measures have been made available to all officers facing such circumstances, including the provision of emergency housing and additional financial support. But while we do not have the power to expunge negative equity, a number of solutions are being explored by the Policing Board and the Police Service with the support of officials in the Department of Justice. It's not been easy, and I share the Federation's desire for this to be resolved as swiftly as possible so that those officers and their families can move on with their lives. Regrettably, police officers, as also prison officers, continue to face the threat of violence on a daily basis. I recognise that this is a heavy burden, and I pay tribute to your unswerving dedication and that of your colleagues, your dedication and your commitment in the face of that threat. I have no doubt that there would have been many more attacks were it not for the considerable success of the PFNI and their associates in the other law enforcement agencies in disrupting and in preventing them. For that, I repeat my thanks to you. I also want to repeat my previous undertaking to do all that I can to ensure that the police have the necessary resources to deal with the threat posed by terrorists and organised criminal gangs. The fact that the National Crime Agency is now fully operational in Northern Ireland will make a significant difference in terms of capacity to respond. But a wider response from society and from politics is required to promote and secure a shared future and to tackle the problems faced within this community. In looking ahead, the 2015 parading season has now commenced. Last year, it was encouraging to see parades pass off without major incident. I will continue to call on leaders, political and otherwise, to play their part again in ensuring that the people of Northern Ireland can have a peaceful summer and to lift the burden of public order policing from the police service. That violence that has too often marred our community on an annual basis is not inevitable, and it is certainly not acceptable. With sufficient will, I believe it is preventable. The challenges ahead that you refer to with the decade of centenaries, Chairman, will affect you further and will pose more pressure on your colleagues. But my experience tells me that you will meet these challenges with positivity and with determination. I share the concern that the future of policing is uncertain. I assure you, though, that no one is pushing policing to the background. I will continue to tackle the difficult issues of resourcing, recruitment, and the effect that these have on your resilience. But there is no clear answer, and there is no quick fix. I do, however, look forward to us continuing to work together and to building on the existing relationship between the Police Service, the Federation, and the Department. As highlighted in the theme for today's conference, I have no doubt that your voice will be heard, both by your members and by those you call upon to do the right thing by those members. I'm a firm believer that this voice is made stronger when you stand together and support one another. And this is something I know that you will continue to do and do well. I know there'll be much work to do, and many challenges are on the way. Chairman, I'm confident that as you and your colleagues take up your new roles within the Federation, you will continue to enjoy a constructive and supportive working relationship with my department, and I very much look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you very much.